NAVYA'S Academy, a space to grow, new perspective. Please subscribe to our channel to keep learning and hit the bell icon for latest updates.
Hello, my dear passionate learners. Welcome to UPSC Civil Services Sociology Optional Series. In this video, we shall do syllabus orientation. I am Navyashree and this is my profile for your reference. Your optional has two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 is fundamentals of sociology, under which you have 10 chapters. So in this paper 1, we shall be focusing mostly on Western sociology, because the early sociology was emerged in Europe in 19th century, and that's the reason mostly we will be discussing Western perspectives in paper 1. Under paper 2, we have introducing society, structure and change. You have on a total 15 chapters under paper 2, and paper 2 will be focusing mostly on Indian society. So from Europe, sociology has migrated to India as well, and how it has developed over time in India, and some of the Indian thinkers also we will be discussing under paper 2. In this video, we will try to analyze all the 10 chapters under paper 1. Alright, let's move on. The first chapter is Sociology, the discipline. This is mostly going to be an introductory part. It is going to help you understand the emergence of sociology better. So the first topic under this is modernity and social changes in Europe and emergence of sociology. So under this topic, we will trace the history of Europe from 5th century till 19th. And 19th century is when sociology emerged as a discipline. So all the changes that happened during this time period and how sociology emerged as a discipline as a reaction to those events, we will see under this topic. Okay, and second topic is scope of the subject and comparison with other social sciences. Under scope, we will see the applicability of sociology. We will look at how sociology emerged as focusing on macro aspects, later it moved to micro aspects, and a lot of other developments that happened over time which has widened the scope of the subject. So all of that we will be seeing under scope. And another topic under this part is comparison with other social sciences. Since sociology is a very young discipline, it's very important to differentiate sociology from the existing disciplines such as anthropology. We also have psychology, history, economics, and all of that. So we'll try to compare sociology with these sister social sciences and understand how sociology is different from them. And the last topic under this chapter is sociology and common sense. So what is common sense? Common sense is a routine knowledge. So it is very important to differentiate sociology from common sense as well. See, sociology is about studying society, right? And common sense is something that is routinely available knowledge in the society. So it becomes important not to get confused sociological explanations with common sense. Let me give you an example. Even NCERT provides the same example about poverty. So most of the commonsensical beliefs say that people are poor because they are lazy. This is a very commonsensical notion. But whereas when you look at it from a sociological perspective, you will try to analyze the reasons why people are poor. For example, somebody is poor because they do not have access to education, no awareness. And even if they have education, they have not been provided proper employment. Even if they have proper employment, they do not get enough pay. So there might be multiple reasons why somebody is poor. So we cannot just simply say they are lazy and that's the reason they are poor. That would be very commonsensical to say. Alright, now let's move on to the next chapter. So the second chapter is sociology as science. This chapter is going to be a debate. We are going to debate on how sociology is a science. See, there is a difference between arts and science, right? Arts is about subjectivity and science is about objectivity. In here, we are going to debate that sociology is a science because earlier sociologists have tried to establish objectivity in sociology. They tried to call it as social physics, and this term has been given by Auguste Comte. So Auguste Comte is basically founder of sociology. He initially called it as social physics and then later he changed it to sociology. That's a different story altogether. But however, what I'm trying to tell you is earlier sociologists were obsessed with making sociology as a scientific discipline. And that's the reason we are going to see this debate here. So you have topics like science, scientific method and critique, all of that, and major theoretical strands of research methodology. So we will see how different strands have been emerged in sociology over time. For example, we will look at structural functionalism. So these are all the words that you'll be hearing most of the time. This is a perspective, a theoretical strand. You will look at the conflict perspective. A lot of perspectives like this you will be looking at under this topic. Next is positivism and its critique. So positivism has nothing to do with positive, being positive or anything. Positivism has something to do with objectivity. So since sociology was emerging as a new discipline and sociologists back then wanted to establish it as a scientific discipline, they adopted something called positivism, which means objectivity. We will see more about this when we are learning about this, and also its critique. And next we will also look at fact. Fact means an evidence that can be collected in the field, right? And here in sociology, we will try to study social fact. Since we are going to study human society, sociologists are interested in social facts. We will also look at what is value, what is objectivity in detail under this topic. And lastly, we will also look at non-positivist methodologies. So, since the initial sociologists were obsessed with positivism and objectivity and they wanted to establish sociology as a scientific discipline, later sociologists have come as a counter to it. So they have given non-positivist methodologies. They said we should not be obsessed only with scientific methods. Rather, we should adopt non-positivist methodologies to study society. For example, phenomenology, ethnomethodology. A lot of perspectives like this have come up to study society in a subjective manner. So subjective and also interpretative manner. So non-positivist methodology is something which is a counter to positivism. So we will study more on this as well in this chapter. Let's move on to the next chapter. Next is research methods and analysis. So before we discuss the topics under this, let me tell you something about natural sciences. So in natural sciences, when you're doing certain experiments, you have a lab. Similarly, in social sciences, we do have a lab, and that lab is society itself, right? Because we are studying human society in social sciences. And when we are studying human society, we will study what? Human relations, human behavior, all these aspects. So studying these aspects is very complex. It's not that simple. So we also have certain rules and regulations on how to study these aspects, and that's when research methods will come into play, right? So under this topic, we will study qualitative and quantitative methods. These are the broad division or broad classification of research methods. Qualitative is about subjectivity, quantitative is about objectivity. These are very interesting topics. We will see all of these under this. Next, we have techniques of data collection. So techniques means the methods or tools that are used when you go to field in order to collect the data. Now let's take, for instance, you are studying on farmer suicide. and you've chosen certain area to go and interview people, or probably you are looking for some data online. You might use different techniques, but finally the ultimate goal is to collect proper data and come to a conclusion on the study. So those kind of different techniques will be understood under this topic. Lastly, we have variables, sampling, hypothesis, reliability, validity. All these are technical terms. We will discuss all these things in depth when we do this chapter. All right. And yeah, that's it about this chapter. The next chapter is sociological thinkers. This is a very important chapter because most of the questions are asked from this chapter because it has all the thinkers. Either you take Karl Marx, Emile Durkheim, Max Weber, Talcott Parsons, Robert K. Merton. These are all classical sociological thinkers, and it's very important to know all the basics about these thinkers. And further, the remaining chapters as well will be covered basing on these thinkers. It will become a base to understand other aspects of sociology if you understand classical thinkers better. So this chapter we will do in depth, and in fact even before we do research methods, we should do this chapter. Like we will go in this number. We will do first chapter, then we will cover the second, then we'll come to fourth, and then we'll go back to third. Alright? Because it is very difficult to understand research methods without understanding the base of thinkers. So we'll do fourth before third. Alright, let's move on to the next chapter. Next is stratification and mobility. So first of all, it's very important to understand what is stratification. The word stratification is actually taken from geography, or so to say geology, we can say. So strata means layers. So when we are talking stratification in sociology, we are talking about certain layers in society. So now let's take for example caste system. We have a hierarchy in Indian society, right? We have Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. So this kind of hierarchy that we are talking in Indian society is called stratification. And mobility is, now let's say Shudras are kind of imitating Brahmins or Kshatriyas so that they could climb up the ladder on this hierarchical system. That is called as mobility. Mobility is basically we are talking about movement from one strata to another strata. Types of mobility and all we will see in this chapter. So it's going to give you in-depth understanding of how stratification exists in society. Since it's mostly Western perspective, we might not be looking towards caste here, but rather we will look at classification of class mostly from Western perspective. So there are topics such as about the concepts of equality, inequality, hierarchy, exclusion, poverty, deprivation. So only when there is a poverty, deprivation and inequalities, there will be different layers in society, right? So we will be looking at all these concepts. And we also have theories of social stratification. Different thinkers have given different perspectives under social stratification as well. For example, we have structural functionalist theory, Marxist theory, Weberian theory. So Weberian theory is of Max Weber's. Okay, we will see all these things in detail, and also different dimensions under stratification. For example, I've given you the example of class. So here also they've given you class, and along with that we will look at the stratification in status groups, in gender, ethnicity, race, different layers and hierarchies. In all these dimensions we will be looking at. And lastly, social mobility. So social mobility, like I said, it's a movement from one strata to another strata. It could be a vertical movement or it could be a horizontal movement. So we will look at social mobility in the aspect of open and closed systems, the types of mobility that I was talking about, vertical, horizontal and all that, and sources and causes of mobility. So what could drive people to move from one strata to another strata? All of that we will see, and this is one of the biggest chapters as well. Mostly at least 3 questions are asked from this chapter. See, the way they ask questions keep changing every year. There is a change in there is no particular weightage on how many questions will be asked from each chapter. It keeps changing. So you should be perfect with every chapter, but however, you can put special focus on fourth chapter, that is thinkers, like I already mentioned in the previous slide. Now let's move on to the next one. Let's look at work and economic life. Under this, we have 3 topics again. Before we get into the topics, let me tell you one thing. So it is events like industrialization that has led to the emergence of sociological thought. And this is the reason why work and economic life is a very important aspect in sociology, because the kind of inequalities or any kind of impacts that the economic life creates, sociologists are interested to study about it. So the first topic is social organization of work in different types of societies. So we will try to trace the history from slave society, feudal and industrial capitalist society. So how hunting and gathering was a kind of work for people in primitive societies. Then the kind of work and economic life moved to agriculture, then industries, right? So how these kind of evolution happened and how people started socially organizing themselves, all of that we will see under this topic. The next topic is formal and informal organization of work. So during industrialization, there is bureaucratization that happened, which means there has been an increase in rationalization of institutions, and that's how formal organizations have been established. So we will try to look all of that here. And also informal is very important. For example, even in India, unorganized sector constitutes a lot of people. So even this is not kind of calculated in Indian GDP. So this unorganized sector becomes very important to understand the inequalities in society as well. Because sometimes when people work under unorganized sector, they are not even eligible for benefits. So it becomes very important for sociologists to discuss these kind of aspects. Lastly, labor and society. Again, here we will discuss a lot of concepts that Marx has given. Your chapter 4 thinkers part will become a base for this, and we will also look at different perspectives about labor. For example, there is also a feminist perspective, how women's work is not calculated in the economy contribution. Like women work in homes, but there is no specific quantification to the work that women do at home, right? So these kind of debates also we can see here. So this is the idea about work and economic life. Let's move on to the next one. The next is very interesting topic, politics and society. Here we have a lot of sociological theories of power, because politics is associated with power, right? Why are politicians fighting every day to get that power? And Weber talks a lot about power. He says he gives a lot of concepts about power, authority, all these things. He says the legitimate power is authority, right? So Weber's concepts will be quite useful in this chapter again. And the second topic is power elite. We will look at people like Pareto, Mosca, all these people. Again, for bureaucracy, we can look at Weber. Then pressure groups, political parties. Pressure groups are the groups who can put pressure on political parties or government to kind of get things done that they wanted. For example, an NGO can be a pressure group. A business organization can be a pressure group, right? Next is nation, state, citizenship, democracy, civil society, ideology. All these are general concepts, but at the same time we will try to relate them with certain thinkers and understand in a better perspective. The last topic under this is protest, agitation, social movements, collective action, revolution. See, all these things, they sound very similar, but there is a stark difference between each. For example, protest could be just for a day or two, but when it becomes for a longer period, then it becomes a social movement, right? So we will try to look at all these things in detail under this chapter. Next topic is religion and society. Again, a very important dimension, because different thinkers in sociology looks at religion in different perspective. For example, religion from structural functionalist point of view is very beneficial for society because it creates solidarity among people. Whereas conflict perspective thinkers will see it as opium of masses. This is what Marx said, which means it is destructive. So different people interpret religion in different perspectives. So it's very interesting to explore all these dimensions. So you have a lot of sociological theories of religion. In fact, initial sociologists, they were very much interested to understand religion in primitive societies, right? They have studied religions like animism. There's also something called totemism, where a totem is considered to be the god, and they start worshipping this totem. This totem could be a stone, it could be any object that they worship. So it's very interesting to explore all these things. Monoism, pluralism, sects, cults, all these things we can explore under this topic. The third topic and the last one under this is religion in modern society. So in modern society, we can understand religion with a dimension of science. We can try to understand how religion and science could go in hand or could not go hand in hand. All these debates can be explored here. Next is secularization. Secularization is basically a process wherein society transforms into a place where the influence of religion decreases, right? Next, religious revivalism. So when these kind of activities happens, there are also people who will revive the religious activities. Next is fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is basically, to put it in simple words, people who are fanatic about certain things. They will just believe in one idea and they will just go on believing it their life long. They will not be ready to change their ideas or ideologies, even if proper rationale is given. Okay. Moving on. Next is systems of kinship. This is again a very interesting chapter because we'll try to understand how kinship organization has been studied by different sociologists and social anthropologists. So we will look at aspects such as family, household, marriage. These are all basic things, right? Because family is like what, a basic social unit. And marriage is also one of the very important social institution. We'll try to explore all these things in this. And next, types and forms of family, lineage and descent, patriarchy. Patriarchy is male domination. India is a patriarchal society. In fact, the world itself is. Right now, the conditions are changing. We will discuss more about patriarchy and sexual division of labor. How work is divided basing on the gender of an individual. This is a very interesting aspect that we will discuss under this, and also contemporary trends, how kinship organization has evolved and how it is today. I'll just give you a very basic example. So back in few years, we had joint families, right? Now most of the families are nuclear families. So there is a change that happened in the way families have emerged. So such contemporary trends we will see. And right now we are seeing live-in relationships also. So there's an emergence of different types of families over time. Such contemporary trends we will look at in this chapter. Okay, moving on. The last and interesting chapter again is social change in modern society. Social change is very important aspect. Even NCRT, both class 11 and class 12 covers this. And this topic these topics here will be an extension of it. The social change also comes both in paper 1 and paper 2. See, there are many other chapters which will repeat both in paper 1 and paper 2. For example, kinship. It comes in paper 2 as well. Even religion comes in paper 2. Politics and society comes in paper 2. Okay. So whatever we cover under paper 1, we need not specifically cover again in paper 2. It will just be an extension of it. Okay. So under this we have sociological theories of social change. There are thinkers who believed in linear social change. There are thinkers who believed in cyclical social change. We will see all these things. Next, development and dependency, agents of social change. So what are the possible agents that could trigger a social change is what we'll look under this. Education and social change, how education has become a trigger for social change, all of that we will see. Certain policies of education also we can look under this. Lastly, very interesting topic, that is science, technology and social change. So technology is a very important aspect even in the current times. Now see online education. If online education has not been there during the pandemic, it would have been a very problematic situation for students. So technology is a kind of trigger that is enhancing or helping social change to happen. That's one thing. And also because of internet, people are able to work from home also, right? So in a way, this has helped a lot. Of course, it has its flaws. All of that also we will look at. But on a whole, we have to look at how these dimensions are impacting society at the end of the day. All right, this is what sociologists should be interested in. So this is about all the 10 chapters under paper 1. So in the next lecture, we shall begin with our first lesson. All right. Now we have come to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any suggestions, please provide your feedback in the comment section below and don't forget to mask up.